Hello, everyone, and welcome to SharePoint Workload Optimization. I'm Christina Singletary.
And I'm Brian Altman.
And we are really excited about sharing this particular course with you because workload optimization helps SharePoint be great. So I'm really excited about sharing and showing you guys all these different things. And so before we get started, I would like Brian to introduce himself.
Again, my name is Brian Altman. I'm a senior technical instructor, Microsoft MVP. This will be my 20th year as an MCT. I've been working with Microsoft Press on a couple books, SharePoint 2010 Administrator Companion and SharePoint 2013 Inside Out Administration, something like that. I speak at a lot of conferences. I usually do about a dozen or so a year internationally, do some consulting. I have my own company called MicroTechPoint. So if you want to know what my speaking schedule is, you can reach me on www.microtechpoint.com. I've been working with SharePoint since 2007. It seems so long ago. Love it. Love what they've done with it. It's come a long way just in those few years. I didn't have the experience with 2003, but I've heard I didn't really miss that much. And then since then, I've been working with the Office 365 space, which is fantastic. I have my MCSA in Office 365, my MCSE in the SharePoint 2013 space. And like I said, I've been working with SQL Server. Actually, SQL Server is the reason I got into it, because I loved working with SQL Server. Been working with that since 4.2a. And then I was like, somebody said this SharePoint thing. Started looking at it. I was like, oh, most of it lives in SharePoint in SQL Server. How bad can it be? So I got into it and just been loving it since then. So
I agree. It's the product has come so far and it really enables people to be more productive and to collaborate in virtual teams. And I've seen organizations grow leaps and bounds because of those tools. And
yeah,
it's amazing.
Yeah.
So I'm Christina Singletary, and you can follow me on Twitter at SharePointTerry. And I'm a senior content developer here at Microsoft, focusing on the SharePoint product for on-premise and Office 365, as well as Project, Yammer, and OneDrive.
Wow.
Yeah, a lot of things. I like to consider myself a collaborative tools specialist and help to mentor small business owners, especially in the entertainment industry, learn how to use SharePoint and Office 365 to improve their production services. I have about 13 years of experience with SharePoint. I've been literally in every single role of SharePoint, and I really dig taxonomy. I think it's very interesting. Words thrill me. And I am a self-proclaimed collaborative evangelist because I believe that through listening and through technology, you can really drive your organization forward. So with that being said, what are our course expectations? So this is going to be a 200, 300 level course. You know, we kind of expect you to have a little bit of knowledge and use of SharePoint, especially with the physical and logical architectures. And then your high learning outcome here is going to be both a mix of discussions, some demos, and hopefully we can get you to understand some of these key concepts for farm configuration, knowledge on calculating future requirements for an entire farm, which is very important, especially with hybrid environments starting to emerge. And also to understand ways to complete SharePoint configurations on a routine basis. So what are we going to learn, Brian?
Well, we have a lot we're going to discuss over the next several hours, and it's going to be beginning with just to kind of ease you in with the create and maintain site collections, because that's where our content is stored. So we're going to get you familiar with the creation and maintenance of site collections. We're going to talk about HA, or high availability, understanding the idea of making sure that the content is available, because one thing you don't want to do is upset your users by saying, yeah, it's the system's down for 20 minutes or an hour or a day or something like that.
And that's especially important for hybrid, because with the Office 365 experience, people are going to get used to that much higher volume consumption of content.
Like with Office 365, that's always available. Why is the system down for 4 hours today? So we're going to get you comfortable with some different planning aspects when it comes to high availability. Then we're going to look at DR, disaster recovery. They kind of go hand in hand, but I split them out because you need to plan for one, and by planning the HA correctly, the DR will be much easier. So we'll talk about those. The next two modules are similar. We got data backups and data recovery. Your data recovery is the key focus, but your data backup is going to provide you that recovery option. So we want to make sure that we spend time creating a backup style that will, or infrastructure that will expedite the data recovery process. And we'll look at social workloads. Everybody wants to be social, or be Twitter, or Facebook, whatever it may be. We're going to talk about social workloads, but built into that SharePoint infrastructure. And we'll talk about WCM, and we'll talk about ECM. We'll expand on both of those when we get in there. There's always some confusion about those. So I'm going to wait till those modules so we start talking about what you can expect in each aspect of those when we're delivering those modules.
Well, that sounds like a lot.
It is.
We have a lot to do.
We have a lot to do, but we're going to take our time. We're going to have fun, and we're going to get you through these 8 modules, and you'll just you'll be quite confident and comfortable with the content when we get through this. Now, what I've done here is I put together an IT pro's perspective. We're going to roll out something. It doesn't even have to be SharePoint. So there's 3 processes to rolling out software. There's planning, and planning. And then the second process is the implementation. Hopefully you only do that once. And then the third process is documentation. So let's start with planning. We're going to plan, but it's not going to be a one-shot planning option. We're going to have to plan. We're going to talk about it. We're going to have discussions. After the 37th meeting, we're going to probably go back and complete the planning process. Hopefully, we're going to have a single implementation process. That's the advantage of planning. And during the planning process, we're going to be starting our documentation. But it doesn't stop there. This is an ongoing process in the documentation piece.
Will always be organic. Documentation will always be organic, especially as the constraints of your governance documents and policies change within your organization as that organization grows.
And this is, when it comes to IT pros, and I've been in this field for 20 years, we're kind of usually a little shy on the planning and the documentation. We'll say, hey, dude, we got to get this installed yesterday. It's like, all right, let's just roll out SharePoint and not really plan as well as we should. And then we'll get to the documentation tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes because we didn't plan so well. So we're in reactive mode and trying to fix our implementation. So I'm going to ask you to stop and make sure you take the time to plan, allowing you for a one-time implementation, and then keep that documentation going and keep it updated. And as we talked about, it's organic. So we want to keep that current because you can't document it once and then 2 years later you expect to go back to that documentation and have it be valid.
And if you have Office 365 in your organization, one thing that you can consider is actually having OneNote, a live OneNote. And as you get your SharePoint environment up as well, you'll be able to have that connection to the OneNote for team sites. So your entire IT department can share that OneNote. And we here at Microsoft really leverage that a lot for all of our documentation and how-to guides for what we do on the different products and services we use within. So
yeah, OneNote's probably one of the most powerful documentation tools that we have available to us, which is it's really nice. Well, we're going to start in this module by looking at and creating and maintaining site collections. So we're going to kick off the course with this particular module here. And specifically, we're going to kind of define what a site collection is. So you have a good understanding, because people are like, what's the difference between a site and site collection? Why would I create a site versus a site collection? I think with a clear definition of what a site collection is, that question will go away. We'll look at site collection types. We have a couple different types that we can create.
There are so many different types. And you really, during that planning stage that we were talking about, you definitely want to make sure that you choose the right one.
Yeah, the right type of site collection. It's really based on a template. We'll also talk about path-based site collections versus host-based site collections. So we'll look at those, make sure you understand the difference between those. And then we'll talk about fast site collection creation, something rolled out here in SharePoint 2016. So right now I've created a site collection. You go down through, you pick out the template, and then you have to sit there for a while for the site collection to be created. They've optimized that by using a content-level database process where you create a site master, and then you create a site collection base or within that database. It just does a copy. So it's much, much faster. We'll look at some different site collection configurations, not all of them, and then we'll jump out and actually review some of these configuration options.
Sounds like a great plan. I like it.
All right, site collections.
So yes, what is a site collection?
It's a tier top down to, in this case here, we've got departments.
Right.
All right, so in departments, we want
the best way of just thinking of it.
We just want all of our departments are there. So that way, if I'm in HR this week, and I'm in finance next week, and because I move around a lot, and then I'm in sales the following week, I want to be able to know where I go find my content from my particular department.
Right.
If I create a site collection with subsites with my departments within that, I'll know that I need to go to www.microsoft.com/departments/sales or /finance.
Mhm. And
So,
some organizations will take it one step further and actually just make it for sales.
yeah.
Or they'll rather than just departments, they'll level it up to sales or HR or finance, just because of the administrative controls and the permission controls for those particular groups. So make sure you're planning that.
Yeah, back to planning, exactly.
Back to planning.
And you'll see here that we have, like Christina just talked about, now we've got departments up here, but we could move sales up to here.
Right.
And then sales be its own site collection. Then we have the Eastern region and the Western region, and we had the Midwestern region and the International region. So we could have its own site collection. So that goes back to, when do I create a site collection versus when do I create a subsite or a site? Well, it's all back to your settings, your personal settings, your navigational settings, your administrative settings,
Right.
and your permissions. Every site collection is an administrative boundary. It's a security boundary. It's a navigational boundary, if you will. So you can decide whether you want a site collection based on those settings, the permissions, navigation, administration, or you can decide, I just want a department and I want subsites that are going to have all my departments within that.
Right.
So often it's just that decision of administrative versus and security and the navigation will help determine whether or not you create a site or a site collection.
Yes. Definitely.
So now we understand what a site collection is. So we're going to look at two types of site collections. We have path-based site collections, probably the ones we're used to working with.
Yes.
Create these right inside of Central Admin. You can create them using PowerShell. For a while, up until the last probably couple years, before Office 365 really kind of took off, we normally used the path-based site collections, but now we're seeing more need for host name site collections, or the HNSC. I can say this. And then these are both for SharePoint Online and Office 365. With the Office 365 and SharePoint Online taking off, that type of site collection has now come forward more, and more people are taking advantage of that type of site collection because they're created at the farm level, which gives us access and more flexibility with them, versus the path-based, which is more created at the web app level. For every time I create a web app, I need to create my managed path for that web app. Where if you create them at the farm level, we can create that, and then every web app can use that farm level managed path. Additionally, when you're creating a host name site collection, that can also be used, or to reference that, we now get DNS involved because we're actually creating a fully qualified domain name. As we can see here, marketing.contoso.com. We could have another host name site collection, sales.contoso.com. So we're actually referencing or accessing that via a fully qualified domain name and DNS. If you look over at the path base, you're going to see that we have intranet.contoso.com. Now we have our site collection, our path-based site collection, I should say. And then we suffix that with marketing or HR or sales. Right. So you'll see the difference in the URLs that are used to access these site collections.
Right. And there's two considerations that you'll want to have is that if you go with a host name site collection, really involve the marketing teams because it's a branding thing at that point. And so a lot of groups can create an identity within the organization. And so it makes it feel a little bit more friendly to everybody. It's easier to remember for the users. Oh, I just have to go to sales, or I just have to go to marketing.contoso.com, right? It's just easier for them versus intranet.contoso.com/sites, or is it Teams? You know, like I don't know what the URL is.
Exactly.
And then also something else to consider is character length, because even though SharePoint 2016 has expanded for the number of characters as you go down the file tree, right?
Yes.
You still do have limitations there. And so it's easier for people to find their documents or the pages that they're looking for because in a host name scenario, it's shorter versus the real long path length. Path base, it can be longer. So those are just some considerations to look into.
Absolutely.
So Brian, how do we create a path-based site collection? Because that's the most familiar.
That's the one we've been working with the most. We're just going to work with that one, and then I'll ask you to review the process for creating host name site collections because those are kind of taking charge with the site collection process. Let me just jump into an image I have here for you. So here we are in Central Admin. We're going to go to Application Management. and then we're going to choose the web app that we want to work with, the web app that we want to create the managed path for. So we're going to click Manage Web Applications. We're going to choose our MTP portal. And you'll notice up on the ribbon, we have Manage Paths. So we're going to click on Manage Paths. And you'll see when we come in here, we have two paths that are set up for us by default. We have an explicit inclusion, which is the root site collection. Now that just means that if I create an explicit inclusion managed path, I can create one site collection. So instead of saying mtpportal.microtechpoint.com, I could say mtpportal.microtechpoint.com/sales, done. Or I can create a wildcard inclusion, which is what I'm going to do here. And we're going to create one called departments because we talked about that earlier. And we're going to set this up as a wildcard inclusion. I'll scroll down and hit Add Path.
Is there one that that you prefer versus the other?
Well, one's built into the URL, similar to the host base. So the URL, the explicit inclusion, you're limited to one. So if you're trying to create a category, so to me, the wildcard inclusion is you're creating a category of site collections versus a single site collection. So if you know you want to create a single one, you're not worried about any site collections beyond that, you could just create the explicit inclusion. But if you want to create a category like we're going to do with departments, then you're going to want to create a wildcard. So we created our department, so we'll go ahead and click OK. Then we'll go back to Application Management. And we'll go Create Site Collections. And you'll see we have our mtpportal.microtechpoint.com. You'll see the drop-down for the URL is Sites, and there's our departments that we just created. So now I can come in here and create a site collection for sales, another one for HR, another one for marketing, and I could create all of my site collections within this URL that we just created using this managed path option.
That's
so awesome. That's something else that you may want to, something you should keep in mind as you're starting to branch out and add additional site collections to your SharePoint implementation.
Really helps with the internal branding and the visibility of things as well.
One of the things they introduced in this version of SharePoint is called Fast Site Collection Creation. Now, I don't want you to have to see or watch me fat finger all the commands, so I've actually done that in advance on these slides here. But the reason that we want to take advantage of fast site collection creation is it improves the performance by using a copy operation. And we're not doing this inside of central admin. This has to be done at the PowerShell level. And it's all done at the database level, in fact. So what you'll do is, as you can see in the first command here, is you'll go in and you'll enable the fast site collection here. And when you enable that fast site collection using a PowerShell command, after you've done so here, you're then going to go out and you're going to create what's called a site master template. And that site master is going to be used whenever we create a new site collection down at the content database level using this PowerShell command. And we provision the new site collection using this information down here. And that's going to go out and create that site collection mucho faster than if we had created it through central admin or using PowerShell, using the standard process of creating a site collection. Now, this seems like a lot of commands, but the good news is the first two you need to execute only once, and then the second one or the third command, you can have that scripted. All you need to do is plug in the URL or the site collection location that you want to create. So then run the command, populate it with the URL that you want to use, bam, done. And you don't have to worry about going through click by click or executing these PowerShell commands multiple times.
So that last one is really good to save in your OneNote.
Yes.
Correct?
Exactly.
And then that's a great way to also say, okay, well, which ones have we created? And it could be a sub-note, if you will, of your OneDrive, your OneNote, so that you can keep it all in your hierarchy, all in order.
Yes. Yeah. Cool. So regardless of how you create your site collections, there's going to be some configuration options that we need to be familiar with. So we're going to go ahead and what are we going to look at here? What would you like me for you to demo?
Well, we're going to look at specifying quota templates, configuring quotas and locks, and then also changing site collection administrators. That's really important because you're going to have this ebb and flow within an organization, people leaving, people coming, new people that need to administer the content. And then also configuring self-serve site creation, which will save a lot of time for the IT department. And that's actually something that we have here at Microsoft
the self-service.
Yeah, self-service, and it's really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, see, like you said, instead of someone, hey, Brian, can you create me a site collection? If you've configured it, they can do their own.
Exactly. So how do we do this, Brian?
Well, we're back in Central Admin, and we're going to go back into Application Management. And inside of there, we have a category called Site Collections. And in Site Collection, you can see we can create a new site collection. We've kind of gone through the steps of that already. We can delete a site collection. That's a toughie. We're going to skip that one. What we're going to specify, though, is the quota templates. Because what you want to do is you want to control the size or the amount of data stored in SharePoint / SQL Server. And what you can do is create a template. So whenever you add a new site collection, the default template will be applied to that. Now, this template is for the entire site collection. So let's say we create our department site collection. Within there, we have departments, we have sales, we have HR, we have finance. All of those roll up into that one quota template, as I have two fingers up, into that one quota template. So we want to make sure that everyone understands the quota templates for all of those departments, not for an individual department. So inside of this template area, we have edit an existing one. So you have one out there already called personal site. You can edit that. That's the one that's used by my sites, by the way. So we're going to create a new one here. And we could use an existing template as a baseline for it. I don't want to do that. I'm just going to call this a brand new one. And we'll call this demo. And we're going to put a limit. The maximum will be, we'll say 500 megabytes with a warning at 400 megabytes.
Are there limits? Like hard limits that for sizes?
Well, there are limits as far as files being updated, and those have changed significantly. We're going to see that in the final module of the course on the limits that have changed and the boundaries and software boundaries. So yeah, there used to be a 2 gig. If we want to surprise everyone earlier, it used to be 2 gigabytes, the maximum file size. Now it's configurable up to 10 gigabytes. So there are some limits as to help maintain these. But I'm setting this as 500 megabytes, so we're going to exceed that quite quickly. Sandbox solutions. So this piece is it's nothing that's new here, but we can actually set up points where you get so many points per day. So if you have a sandbox solution that wasn't, say, thoroughly tested, if a sandbox solution causes issues, certain issues, you get more points and more points. The more points throughout the day that issue causes until you exceed. Let's say we put this one at, we'll say, 200 points. And then we put the warning at 150 points. If a specific sandbox solution hits that 150 points, we're going to get a warning. When it hits 200 points, that sandbox solution is shut down for the day. So it has to get reset tomorrow in order for us to be able to use that sandbox solution again. So we can configure that when we're creating a quota template. And we'll go ahead and click OK on this and save this new quota template that we just created. And then we're back to our site collection category. After we specify the quota template, look at quotas and locks. And a lot of people think those two are intertwined, and they're actually quite separate. I can apply a quota to a specific site collection, and then I can apply a lock separately to a site collection. I can't apply a quota and expect a lock to be applied when that quota is exceeded. Those two do not integrate that way. So we're in here. Notice we're at the MTP portal. We have Brian's PC for the site collection. We'll scroll down. It's not locked, but what I could do is lock it. Let's say there's an issue with this particular site collection. I could say, I want people to view the content, but I don't want them to add any more content. We could use this lock here, or I could put it in read-only mode, which allows farm administrators to control the read-only lock, turn it on or off, and then we can provide an information. So people are trying to add content and they can't, they'll see this information here.
That's really good ideas surrounding migrations as well,
Yes.
Is to apply these types of locks and make sure that it's communicated well, but to apply a lock if there's going to be a plan to move the content in some way.
Yeah, exactly. And if you really have to lock it down based on what you said, we can actually put it in no access mode and then no one can touch it. They can't see, they can't touch, they can't do anything with it. Here's where we can come in and apply the quotas. Here's the demo quota that template we just applied. We can do that. We can override. Someone slips you a $100, you can override a quota that's been applied. So if someone says, "Hey, here's a $100, can you increase my quota?" You can do that here individually, and you can also change the point section. By default, it's 300 and 100. You can also change the points based on each of these as well. So those are some other options that you have here as you're working with your quotas and locks at the site collection level.
Will the administrator need to reset the the domain in any way or restart any services
No,
if they do that?
It's applied, right? It's applied immediately, and then they'll have to go back and reset it. If they want to turn it back off, they'll have to turn it back off afterwards.
Great.
Change site collection administrators. There's a couple of us that can be a site collection administrator for a site collection at a time.
Yep. Here at Microsoft, we actually have to have a requirement of two site collection administrators, because somebody's at one point in time could be leaving or someone is on vacation, and so notification has to happen.
Yeah, if someone gets hit by a Guinness truck tonight, you're going to make sure someone else is able to manage that site collection. So you'll notice here we only have one, so we'll go in and add a secondary. And we'll go ahead and do an OK. And now if something happens, Linda has as many permissions as site collection as I do, or as the administrator does. And the last piece is to configure the self-service site creation. Please don't confuse this with the fast site collection creation that we just talked about. That's completely new in 2016. This feature's been around for a little bit, but this allows individual users to create a site collection instead of having to call the help desk or the IT pro and say, dude, I need a new site collection, or dude, I need a new site collection. Can you create me a new site collection called this? We can actually set up site collection creation or self-service site creation by coming in here and flipping this switch from off to on. And then down here, we can supply the quota template for the new site collections. We'll add our demo. And if we scroll down a tad further, we can decide whether or not we want to set up the start as site link should be hidden, or we can actually just prompt the users to create a site underneath it. So not only are we creating new site collections, we also can control whether or not our users are creating site subsites within the site collections. And then down below, we have a few other options as far as the site classification settings, whether or not it's the users need to deal with that. It's optional or it's a required choice. And then if we're going to require they have a secondary contact, as we do here at Microsoft, we can then set that to secondary contact and click OK. And now we've configured this self-service site creation. So those are the configuration options we have inside SharePoint 2016 for site collections.
Well, we covered quite a bit.
We did.
And in this first module, we defined site collections, we reviewed site collection types, and we did a demo on both the path-based site collection and reviewing site collection configurations. And also we discussed about the fast site collection creations as well. So there's been a lot of things we've covered in a very short period of time, and we look forward to bringing you into the next module.